Hey, welcome to this video, everybody. Doug Barry here. I appreciate you joining me on this. So, do we need to worry? Do we need to worry about preparing for anything, or is it all just conspiracy? We've got an expert, some clips I'm going to share with you right now, an expert who is deeply involved in understanding what's going on with regards to our power grid and the importance of the steps that we should be taking to actually, number one, pay attention to what's happening in the world and the threats that are out there, but also what steps we should be taking to be prepared to handle it. So we're going to get into the first clip right away here so we can start breaking this down. So let's roll that first piece from the interview with Tommy Waller, former lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marines.
Fortunately, I actually did not understand the true nature of some of what these enemies believe when I served in uniform. It wasn't until I began to work for this national security nonprofit that has uncompromised analysis of what threatens the Republic that I actually learned the truth about a lot of those threats. And so, but that being able to be present and witness very difficult times certainly was formative for me, right? And also reinforces the value of the kind of work that our nonprofit does to understand enemies of freedom, why they fight, what their doctrine says. Because if you don't pay attention to the enemy, whether it's spiritual battle or physical battle, you're not going to win.
Yeah, that sums it up right there. If you're not paying attention to the enemy, whether spiritual battle or physical battle, natural battle, you're not going to win. It makes me think of a quote, one of my favorite quotes. In fact, I have it hanging in my weight room, is made it into a banner, is a quote from an old movie where John Wayne plays Genghis Khan. And in that movie, the mayor will say of a community that Genghis Khan is about to overrun the next day, comes out the night before to negotiate. And he says to Genghis Khan, why don't you bring your men in? Let them rest. Let's give them the whole relaxation. Let's give them food. Let's give them a warm place to sleep. And someone in Genghis Khan's entourage says, no, the men will stay out here and they will sleep on the ground where it's difficult, where it's challenging, because if they become too comfortable, they will become soft. If they get soft, they'll get weak. If they get weak, they can't fight. If they can't fight, they die. And so there is this reality of us needing to stay sharp. And this goes spiritually and naturally for every single one of us. Now, this expert, Tommy Waller, is, again, former lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marines and spent 10 years working on the EMP Commission, advising even before he became president, Donald Trump, and warned him with others in the EMP Commission and other candidates at the time who were running for president in 2016 of the danger of what was taking place from our enemies around the world and the different areas in which we can be attacked and the seriousness of protecting the grid in particular. But not just the grid, there are other areas of our infrastructure that are necessary for us, for society to function well. We have much more from Tommy Waller I want to get into, so let's go ahead and get to the second clip here and listen to what he's saying about this. What about the EMP should the average person know? What are myths? What are facts? What should we be most concerned about?
Well, Doug, it's funny you say what's myths and what's facts, because there's a lot of information out there that's meant to deceive the public. So the first thing I'll tell you right now is it's real, right? So it's very unfortunate because you've probably heard the term tinfoil hat. Hey, where's your tinfoil hat? Like you're an apocalyptic prepper. All these terms of ridicule for people who care about something that's very real, something that our Defense Department has spent billions of dollars to protect our nuclear missile systems and command and control systems against. It's a real phenomenon. And it's not just the nuclear kind of electromagnetic pulse that can affect us. The sun produces coronal mass ejections, these highly charged particles that blast out into space all the time. And if we connect, if our Earth connects with that coronal mass ejection, that CME, it can create a natural form of EMP that can take down our electric grid. And so, for your viewers and listeners, just think about for a moment, what would life be like if you didn't have the grid?
Now, this is a question that a lot of people struggle with. I want to make something very clear as I go through this video. We break down these clips in this interview with Tommy Waller. And by the way, if you want to watch the entire interview, it's the U.S. Grace Force podcast, just came out a couple days ago at the time that I record this. And I want to make this clear about this whole interview and what we're talking about here. This is not about fear. This is actually what we're trying to do is alleviate fear. All right, we can get concerned about the grid going down, but just as he talked about in the previous clip about if we don't know the enemy, if we don't realize the threat, then we're going to lose. Well, if we don't realize that there are problems out there that could occur and we don't take steps, actionable steps, first and foremost spiritually, which we'll get into in another clip coming up. But if we don't take those spiritual steps first, but also natural, practical steps, then yes, it puts us in a very, very difficult situation where we could become, let's say, not just overwhelmed, but we could become devastated by the tragedy of it. However, I'm going to address something towards the end of this video that's really going to draw out really a balance in this. We can understand not only the need to be prepared, but also the need to appreciate and enjoy the great things that God gives us. But before we get to that, I do want to make clear when he's talking about something like a coronal mass ejection or whether it's an EMP, the fragility of our system is very, very real. In fact, any of us who've been in a thunderstorm and seen the lights go out know that when they go out fast, it can really change things quickly for us, and it can lead to a lot of fear. Now, if you have something as simple as a lantern, a flashlight, that can alleviate that fear. In other words, when light shows up in the darkness, that changes the dynamics immediately, not just on a natural level that you can see where you're going, but even emotionally and psychologically, it changes things. Spiritually speaking, is that not the same for us? That when there's a sense of spiritual darkness, such as sin, and the light of Christ, the light that the Blessed Mother is an instrument in bringing to the world, she's the dispenser of all graces. Doesn't that change things for us emotionally, psychologically, spiritually? Absolutely. So it is, as he mentioned earlier in the previous clip, it's not just the natural, it's the spiritual as well. And we have to be prepared for that. But we do have to pay close attention to what's going on with infrastructure, with the grid, with the things that we have to be aware of. Be our coalition. We do all we can to try to help people be better prepared when it comes to these types of things. And Tommy Waller, is a big supporter of this type of work. He himself is involved in that, which we'll get to a little later as well. I want to encourage you to go check out, though, at this point, anytime here, click the link in the description below. We have a 7-day free trial going on right now. At the time that I'm recording this is live, but being recorded. And it ends today, May 3rd, Friday night. The 7-day free trial. It's available right now. And if you miss it, if you see this video later, you can still go out and sign up for the Indomitable course, which addresses both the spiritual and natural pieces of being better prepared. Okay, let's get to the next clip with former Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Waller. Here we go.
I'll do is just answer the question about grid down, because it could be nuclear EMP, it could be
Right.
solar weather, it could be a cyber attack, it could be physical sabotage, physical attack. It could be a supply chain attack, right? We have 449 Chinese manufactured transformers in our grid right now. At least one of them has been found to have a hardware backdoor that would allow someone to switch it off. It could even be a blackout that ensues because of unreasonable government policies that shut down baseload power generators like coal, nuclear, and fossil fuels and attach all sorts of electrified things to the grid. And physics just doesn't allow for a grid to work in that kind of environment. So it could be any of those threats. But your viewers and listeners should just think about electricity. What does it do for them? If you're living, water, right? Depending on where you live and how you get water, it could be minutes if you're in a high-rise apartment that all of a sudden there's no water because there's no water pressure because there's no pumps, right? So Doug's talked about this many times before in terms of preparedness. You got that concept of 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Electricity in modern civilization affects all of those. Even people on ventilators in a hospital, if they don't have backup power, they're gone in 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's a pretty sobering thought when you think about it. Again, how fragile we are, even by God's design. 3 minutes without oxygen. And most of us don't have to be concerned about that. But 3 days without water, every single one of us needs to be concerned about that. Being better prepared when it comes to these things is essential. We do take these things for granted. We take them lightly. Now, we do hear a lot of people saying, well, it's all conspiracy theory. You don't need to prepare for this sort of thing. Well, here you have a gentleman who's talking about these things at length And what he's talking about is how every single one of us needs to be aware of what's going on. Now, there's a certain responsibility that we have to respond to these things. And again, I just can't encourage you enough to look seriously at what's going on in our world right now. When we see uprisings, protests, rallies, we see an intensification of war happening in different parts of the world. We also see natural disasters. Again, at the time I record this, just about a week ago, there was a tornado that hit in Elkhorn, Nebraska, west of Omaha, Nebraska. That's an area I used to live in. I lived in the Lincoln area, not too awfully far from this area, where the tornado hit hard and devastated an entire neighborhood. That's how fast things can change, whether it's a natural disaster like a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake, or whether it's something like a blizzard, which comes on maybe a little bit slower. It gives you a little more time to prepare, but when it hits, it can hit hard and it can be devastating in many respects. These are just the natural disasters. That's not counting, as he mentioned, 449 Chinese-made transformers in America. The transformers he's talking about are massive transformers. These are the types of transformers that need to be shipped around the country on railway cars that can handle about 100 plus tons. These are massive transformers. He explained this more in detail at a meeting that I took part in with him and some other experts in this field a couple of weeks back. And they explained that there are only a couple of railway cars that can handle these types of transformers in the country. That's how unique they are. And the fact that over 400 of them, almost 449, he said, are made in China, and at least one was found with a backdoor type of hardware that allows cyber interaction from an outside source. These are the types of things that should cause us to seriously look at our personal situation and decide, what can I do where I am with what I have? And those of us who have resources of any kind, and I'm talking about even $5, $10 extra to go buy a case of water, those are things we should be considering. This is, again, something that we want to recommend today, at least before the time runs out. Sign up for the 7-day free trial. It's free, 7 days, gives you an opportunity to learn about different things that you can do that will help you be better prepared, both spiritually and naturally. There's a great community online that we have. There's great resources. There are links to all types of items out there that will help you not waste money, but make what I like to say it's strategic purchases so that you can get the right equipment that'll help you in any kind of a crisis. It'll at least give you even a glimmer of hope. As I said, even a good flashlight or a lantern in the middle of a thunderstorm when the lights go out can bring a lot of peace and comfort. Anybody with children or grandchildren, you know what I'm talking about. When things go dark and all of a sudden mom or dad or someone pulls out a flashlight, it changes the dynamic of the situation and brings hope. All right, more clips of Tommy Waller. Let's get to the next one. Here we go. Would you say to those people out there, from your expertise and what you see, the threats, the enemies, you've been involved in so much of this, what do you say to people for the sake of responsibility, how we should be really viewing this, and what action then we should be taking right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, Doug, it's really a duty. That's what it is. You have a duty. If you're a dad, husband, father, if you're a mother, I mean, you have a duty to your family, right? First and foremost. And it doesn't take a combat veteran to be able to see what can happen, right?
Right.
Look at October 7th of last year in Israel. The atrocious things that these men did. We're not going to talk about it on this podcast, but people can go do their own research. We're talking about unadulterated, absolute evil, terrible, violent things to innocent people. That evil exists in our world all around us all the time. And in that case, many of these Israeli families, I mean, the people who propagated these crimes against humanity upon them, they were right in that same community doing pre-attack surveillance. That same thing's happening here in America. Look, 20 years ago, our government sent guys like us overseas to fight, terrorists because of what they did on September 11th. Right now, they're here.
That should be enough to cause, again, all of us to take a deep breath and put in perspective the priorities that we need to consider. Now, again, it shouldn't be fear. It shouldn't be anxiety. It shouldn't be worry. But Well, maybe fear in the right way. And what I mean by that is, and this is also addressed in the podcast. I don't have any of the clips pulled up ready for you right now. You can check out the whole podcast if you like on U.S. Grace Force. And we're going to have Tommy Waller on with us live in the near future. But he speaks about fear being that fight or flight physiological something that God gives us. God instills it in us. And of course, coming from his background as a combat vet and many other things that he's done. And I think any of us can really understand this in the first place. You don't have to be, again, as he mentions, a combat vet to understand these things. We get it. If there's a moment of some crisis that's coming upon us that can cause physical harm to us or a loved one, our reaction is not stand still and just pray. Our reaction is act. It's to move. It's to engage in some positive, productive way that is fruitful. And that's what we're getting at here. The idea of preparedness is about being fruitful, being positive, being effective, not just for ourselves, but for those that God entrusts to our care. Knowing that there are threats, there are enemies out there. As he said, they did reconnaissance in Israel to get ready for that attack on October 7th. And he says, that is going on here in America. And if you're watching this video from some other part of the world, know that there is a much larger picture at play here, especially at the current moment where we see many universities dealing with anti-Israel protesters, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, and so forth. Regardless of your position on this, we should be concerned about, even if it's a small group, the percentage of people that want to do harm for the sake of some religious cause or whatever existential belief that they have. We need to be looking at what our responsibilities are, our duties when it comes to protecting those, caring for those that God entrusts to us. And if you're alone and you think, well, there's no one counting on me, I would disagree with that. You're part of this world. You're part of this community. You matter. You matter. You count. And so we want to not have a defeatist attitude. God does not want us to have that defeatist attitude. That's what our whole course and Be Our Coalition, the Indomitable course. Again, we're talking about a 7-day free trial right now for it, but whether you sign up for the 7-day free trial or sign up for Indomitable later on your own at another time, understand that the whole goal of Indomitable is to understand that God created us with an indomitable human spirit, as St. John Paul II says, to not be dominated, to not give into fear, to not give into anxiety, to not give into, I should say, unhealthy fear. Let holy, healthy fear motivate us and move us to do the right thing. The type of fear that even Christ talks about when he says, don't fear the one that can kill the body, fear the one that can kill the body and the soul forever in Gehenna. But then he also talks about what happens when you have the 5 virgins who don't have enough lamp oil when the bridegroom comes. All right. There's a bit of fear that he's telling us in that parable. If you're not prepared, then of course you go to the Old Testament, Joseph of the Old Testament, when Pharaoh says he's had this crazy dream, these crazy dreams of fat and skinny cows and fat and skinny grain. And Joseph explains to him, there's going to be 7 years of famine. Well, there's a bit of healthy fear there, because this is all of Egypt that's going to be affected and all the surrounding regions, all the surrounding provinces. So what happens is Joseph is put in charge, and Joseph goes out and cooperates with that healthy, motivating fear, and they store up grain and all the other pieces of an infrastructure you would have to create over 7 years of bounty to prepare for 7 years of natural disaster, 7 years of famine. All of this inspired by God's dream through Pharaoh and Joseph's understanding of that dream, because God inspired Joseph. We see God's hand working even through natural disasters, but Joseph's response is that holy response to a holy, healthy dose of fear that says, if we don't do something, a lot of people are going to be devastated. So sitting back on our laurels, so to speak, and not acting or engaging is not the right answer when we know that the threats and the enemies are out there. Okay, let's get to the next clip of Tommy Waller, and we'll break that one down here.
To wake up and realize that we have a duty to protect our families and our communities, and that the enemy is at the gate, that they're here, right? The number of people that have entered this country illegally, if you just took just 0.1%, that's still enough to have a few thousand in every single state of people who could be producing sabotage on our critical infrastructure, right? Just the math alone, right, is staggering. And so if people, like, you don't have to be a combat vet to just have open eyes, right, and realize the precarious state that we're in as a republic.
So again, that should be a wake-up call, a warning to all of us to recognize that we need to wake up and we need to respond, not in this anxiety, not in this hand-wringing sort of paralyzed thought process, though. And I really want to encourage everybody to kind of look at it from this standpoint. Let's look at a kind of a 90-10 split when it comes to this. This is my encouragement I mentioned at the beginning of the video. 90-10 split. Let's put 10% of our time and energy into being better prepared. 10% into exercise, 10% into some sort of training, self-defense training, 10% into storing up some food, some water, make sure we got medical supplies, we got the right kind of gear and equipment. Just like we have to take 10% and tithe to the church, let's take 10% of our funds maybe and allocate it for the proper survival gear and that type of equipment and food that might be needed in case of a crisis. 10%. And then the other 90% of our time, enjoy life and enjoy the people that God has in your life. There is a mindset that some people have. Oh no, crisis coming. Oh no, apocalyptic event. Even the prophecies from heaven. The Blessed Mother gives us prophecies. She never says, be so fixed on the warnings that you don't enjoy life. She never says that. She says, take the right steps, of course, to be better prepared. But we're supposed to enjoy the great gifts that God gives us. Stop and smell the roses, as the saying goes, right? So let's think about what we're doing and how we're prioritizing our priorities. And let's look at that 90-10 sort of split. I want everybody who watches these videos, everybody who joins BR Coalition, anybody who signs up for the Indomitable course, the training that we do, I want anybody and everybody to understand that there is joy and hope and peace in the world around us all the time. God is present. God is not in control of everything, though, as some people like to say. Okay, God is sustaining everything, but he does not control our choices. If he controlled our choices, then we wouldn't have to worry about anything. But then again, we'd be puppets or robots to him. Free will speaks of the depth of love. And God wants us to love so much, him and others, that we take the right steps and act of our own free will, spiritually and naturally, to take care of those responsibilities and duties that we have. One more clip from Mr. Tommy Waller. Let's take a listen to this, and then we'll break this down and wrap this up.
I was going to direct this to both of you, actually. I am there. I'm convinced. I struggled. I didn't want to believe it, but I'm there. So what do I do? And I just represent everybody who's listening right now. What do we do? What's first, second, third? What's our action plan?
Yeah, so first is going to be spiritual, right? It's going to be doing everything that you all promote all the time, which is maintaining a state of grace and be prepared to meet your maker, right? But you're also responsible for the spiritual welfare of all of those under your charge, right? You have a duty, the authority that you're given based on whatever your position is. If you're a mother or father, or if you're in charge of a company or an organization, there are certain spiritual duties that are assigned to you that you have to take seriously. So that's obviously first and foremost. And the second thing, I mean, Doug's been promoting it for a long time, is being battle ready in a physical realm. And and I'm sure there's probably, Doug, you'll have resources you can point your listeners and viewers to, but I would just wholeheartedly endorse everything that Doug has been trying to get people to wake up to do for so much time.
You know, and I just want to say this. First, I thank Tommy for his support. When I met him a couple of weeks back, I didn't know that he'd been following the work that we've been doing with Grace Force and with BR Coalition. He overwhelmed me tremendously with his support, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you, Tommy. If you see this, it means a lot to us. But I also want people to consider whether or not you sign up for this free 7-day trial or sign up for our course or purchase our BREP, Be Ready Emergency Preparedness course, whether you do any of that or not, take steps today. Starting today, do something to be better prepared. 10%, just 10% of your time. 10% exercise, get stronger, get healthier. 10% order your home, order your life. Increase your prayer life, 10%. Spend a little more time, obviously, in those steps and those things that are necessary to be productive and fruitful and effective. Okay, let's take 10% of the funds that we have and apply it towards a little extra food or water or equipment, gear. Our BR Coalition YouTube channel has a lot of free information on there. You can go out, get a lot of great stuff off of there. There are free downloads you can get from brcoalition.com. Go check that out. There'll be information, at brcoalition.com for many, many more things that we have. But right now, today, take advantage of the remaining time that we have by the end of the day here to sign up for the 7-day free trial. And then it's only $27 a month after that. But 90% of your time, this is just my opinion, my advice, 90% of your time, love, enjoy the peace, the goodness, the holiness that God gives us in this world. Enjoy time with your family, with your friends. Take a deep breath and be thankful that you've got the great gifts that God gives you, whatever they are. Every day, show gratitude towards God and towards others. Make that 90% of your life, because the 10%, if we put it into the training and the preparation, that can be a little heavy at times when we see the signs of the times and what's going on, both the prophecies from heaven and what's going on in the world, war, government, problems, all these types of things. That can be overwhelming at times. I get it. I live in this world all the time trying to help promote these things. But I also know I have to set those things aside at the right time and spend time just enjoying the great gifts that God gives us and breathe that in. So again, practice the 90-10% sort of approach. If that helps, feel free to seek any information we can provide and help you with at brcoalition.com. Don't be afraid to go out and check out the free information on our BR Coalition YouTube channel. And again, today, at the time I record this, May 3rd, until the end of the day, we do have that free 7-day sign up. Okay. And then after that, $27 a month, it's a great price. And you're going to have an enormous amount of information, both spiritual and natural, links to different equipment, community, people you can work with and join in who support each other. We do a live weekly event where we interact with each other and with encouragement and observations, reflections of things going on in the world. And we have seen tremendous growth from a lot of people. Thanks be to God. And people who have chosen of their own free will to take the steps that are necessary to put things in the right place so they can make that productive, fruitful progress in life. All right. Thank you for joining me in this. Please keep us in your prayers. You're in ours. And remember, hope is found when you have a plan of action in the face of a crisis. Check out brcoalition.com for more. And I look forward to seeing you all again in the next video. Have a great day.